Evacuate or else. Northern Gaza is being pounded relentlessly by Israeli strikes, reducing entire neighborhoods to rubble. Every morning, we wake up to killings and death, this resident says. We don't know where to go. We don't know where's safe.
The IDF has reportedly started conducting local raids on the ground in Gaza a day after ordering 1.1 million Palestinians to evacuate their homes, which is impossible. It's not feasible, and we'll get into specifically why that's not possible in the most densely populated place on earth in a minute. But before that, we have to talk about everything that's happened so far. Now, ahead of this ground invasion from CNN, Israeli forces dropped about 6,000. You heard me right, you read that right, 6,000 bombs on Gaza between October 7th and 12th. The Israeli Air Force said in a statement Thursday. Now, on top of that, Human Rights Watch also found that the IDF used white phosphorus in Gaza, which can severely burn people and set fire to civilian structures. And as I mentioned, such a densely populated area. Of course, the IDF denies this. It's a war crime. They're going to deny it. Doesn't make it not true. Now, at least 423,000 Gazans have already been displaced by the airstrikes. A little more on that. For 6 days, Israeli warplanes have pounded Gaza with airstrikes that have reduced streets and homes to rubble and killed more than 1,799 people, including 583 children, and injured 7,388 others, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. And those numbers continue to increase every hour of every day, it seems. And obviously we have to mention as well that over 1,300 Israelis have been killed by Hamas, many of whom were civilians. As I mentioned previously, the IDF has called for those 1.1 million Gazans living in the north to move south. And Israeli government has cut off power to Gaza. So many people living there don't have any charge in their cell phones anymore. They don't have a way to receive this information. So what the IDF did was dropped leaflets from planes into Gaza, calling for the residents to head south. So here's what those leaflets said. Civilians of Gaza City, evacuate south for your own safety and the safety of your families, and distance yourself from Hamas terrorists who are using you as human shields. In the following days, the IDF will continue to operate significantly in Gaza City and make extensive efforts to avoid harming civilians. And I'll explain to you shortly why that statement is just blatantly false, a complete lie. But before we get to that, we need to discuss why it's not possible to evacuate 1.1 million people from Gaza. Again, it's one of the most densely populated places on earth. So here's a little bit more detail on what this order from Israel means for the people of Gaza.
Israel has called for everyone north of the wetland called Wadi Gaza, including Gaza City, to evacuate south, some 1.1 million people. But it's not just homes that must be evacuated. This area contains at least 10 hospitals, 3 UN-run compounds, and 2 refugee camps. From the top of Gaza to the Wadi, it's only about 10 miles, a 4-hour walk on clear roads. But since Saturday, there have been more than 6,000 airstrikes across Gaza, leaving many roads unpassable. And if the deadline is to be met, since announcing it last night, 46,000 people would have had to cross from north of Gaza to the south every single hour.
And for everybody saying, why don't they just leave? First of all, it's the largest open air prison in the world. The people living there do not have freedom of movement. But also the southern exit into Egypt, known as the Rafah crossing, has been closed, leaving them with absolutely nowhere to go. In fact, it was also bombed. The roads there were extensively bombed. So even if it was open, they wouldn't be able to get there safely. And thankfully, the UN has aggressively spoken out against what Israel is ordering. Here's a statement from the United Nations. The United Nations considers it impossible for such a movement to take place without devastating humanitarian consequences. The United Nations strongly appeals for any such order, if confirmed, to be rescinded, avoiding what could transform what is already a tragedy into a calamitous situation. And they stop short of calling it what I will call it right now, genocide. An attempted genocide of the Palestinian people is what's coming. And the Palestinian people know that. And it's being cheered on by Western politicians and Western media. And we'll get into that in a second. But it's not clear when this 24-hour evacuation period began or when it's supposed to end. But as I mentioned, it was a blatant lie on behalf of the IDF that they're trying to limit civilian casualties by spreading the word to evacuate. Because as Gazan residents in the north attempted to flee south, the IDF bombed their bus caravans. 70 people were killed and 200 were injured in an Israeli strike on a convoy of civilians heading from northern Gaza to central Gaza, according to the Palestinian government press office. So now what we're seeing is a lot of Gazans are choosing to stay in the north, and they're protesting in the streets saying that they would rather die. They would rather die than be further humiliated by the IDF. And despite over 1,800 people being killed already in Gaza, Benjamin Netanyahu said this today. I'm telling you, it's only the beginning. I'm not going to give you additional details, but it is only the beginning. The beginning of a genocide, which is only bolstered by what Israeli President Isaac Herzog said today, that all citizens of Gaza are responsible for the deadly attacks of Hamas. Here's what he said. It's an entire nation out there that is responsible. It's not true, this rhetoric about civilians not being aware, not involved. It's absolutely not true. They could have risen up. They could have fought against that evil regime, which took over Gaza in a coup d'etat. He's blaming innocent men, women, and children for the crimes of Hamas, advocating for collective punishment of the people of Palestine. That is a war crime. And it's being cheerleaded, like I said, by Western politicians. It's being cheerleaded by the Biden administration, because this is what the White House press secretary had to say when a reporter asked her what she thought of calls for peace. The question was, well, there have been some members of Congress who have called for a ceasefire, and they have not gone as far as backing the administration's call for support for Israel. She responded like this. So look, I've seen some of those statements this weekend, and we're going to continue to be very clear. We believe they are wrong. We believe they're repugnant, and we believe they're disgraceful. Repugnant and disgraceful. Calling for peace is repugnant and disgraceful. Then I guess I'm repugnant and just disgraceful because I refuse to sit idly by while this genocide is about to be carried out on the Palestinian people. I'm sorry, I'm emotional, but this is an emotional time. And we're watching our politicians celebrate this. And it's mortifying and disgusting. Cenk.
So Hamas's attack against Israel was morally wrong, strategically wrong in every way, and not just wrong, but abhorrent. But we don't control Hamas, and we didn't know it was coming. But we can influence Israel, and Israel is saying we are going to kill those people now. And so there's no conflict in saying what Hamas did was unimaginable and awful, and saying do not kill thousands of innocent civilians in Palestine. There is no conflict between those two things. You can say both of those things at the same time. And by the way, here, let me say a note to the demagogues, okay? So when someone says maybe we should not kill those Palestinian civilians, saying, oh, you're helping Hamas, is not gonna work here, okay? You can take that crap and send it somewhere else. I don't care what kind of demagoguing and propaganda you're going to do. We are not in favor of killing those civilians. Don't tell me that, oh, golly gee, it was all an accident when you bombed a bus full of civilians, kill 70 of them, and then go, oh, well. No, not oh, well. You say, well, Hamas did it. Are you saying that, is that your standard now? Is Israel using the Hamas standard? That is a very fair question, because I would hope, I would beg and beseech Israel to not use the Hamas standard. So look, and then here's another demagogue thing to say. Well, why don't they just leave? Okay, either you're saying you're profoundly ignorant when you say that, or you're saying, haha, we know they can't leave. We know that they're trapped inside of Gaza. They can't get out from Israel. They can't get out from Egypt. They have a naval and air blockade. There is literally no way to leave Gaza. It is a tiny little area with 2.2 million people packed in it, half of them under the age of 18, dropping 6,000 bombs. Now the Hamas rockets are awful, they kill people, etc. So I'm not saying this to minimize the Hamas rockets, but they are much, much, much smaller than the Israeli bombs. The Israeli bombs, as you just saw with your own eyes, level whole buildings at a time. And the Palestinians don't have Iron Dome. Israel has Iron Dome. It doesn't make anything Hamas did justifiable. But that's not the point. The point is, you're not Hamas. You're supposed to be a democracy. Okay, we have 1,000 things to say. I want to let Ramesh in here, but one last thing for now. If you say, I'm going to cut their water and gas and electricity and everything they need to sustain themselves, and if the kids are on incubators and people are on life support in the hospitals, and I'm going to cut their electricity and let them die, you're saying, I run an open air prison. I run a place where they cannot escape and where I will kill them whenever I want to. Now, Israel doesn't wantonly kill them most of the time, right? So they're not, they do, but they do from time to time, and they definitely keep them as prisoners. There is no question in the world. And they say, and one of the reasons for the occupation is, well, we can't trust these savages. And so since we can't trust them, we need to hold them basically hostage. We're holding 2 million people hostage. And so when Hamas does something barbaric like this, we're gonna punish all 2 million. Because that's why we were keeping them as prisoners in the first place. So that if you dare mess with us, we cut their water so they can't drink. We cut their electricity so they can't live if they're in the hospitals. Because we have them as hostages. Be honest about it, be honest about it. What Hamas did is unjustifiable, in my opinion, morally in any way, shape, or form. But the occupation is also completely morally unjustifiable. And if you're hurt by that fact, okay, I hear you. People get super emotional about their own identity. I do, everybody does, we're all human. But I'm asking you to get beyond that and see the facts. There is no occupation that can be justified like this, and certainly not for 56 years. Ramesh.
We have to start and end with the sense of compassion and care for the sanctity of life, right? And it's quite clear in this situation that Palestinian lives don't matter, specifically the lives of peoples in Gaza, don't matter nearly to the extent that other lives do, right? And I think that that is what we're getting at here. Keep in mind, everybody, as you both alluded to, Hamas has been, Gaza has been an open air prison, as you said, administered in an apartheid type state since 2006. So that means nearly half of the entire population of the Gaza Strip, around 2 million or so people, have been born and grown up in an open air prison. There is no place for the refugees in Gaza to head to. This is something I know firsthand. We can talk about it more. I've spent time in the Sinai. I have multiple friends in Gaza and Gazan friends who were unable to migrate since 2013 when the Egyptians bombed the tunnels, which were the main source, underground source of supplies, healthcare, water, and so on. So this gets to, I think, a very, very important question. Who cares about Palestinian lives? And what does it take to protect Palestinian people's lives, recognizing that the ways Palestinian lives have been infringed upon, especially in the Gaza Strip, but also to a lesser extent, but also brutal extent through settler colonialism in the West Bank, has led to a situation where brutal, terroristic, deplorable acts were taken up by Hamas. The rockets really don't tend to have much effect, but they came in with parachutes and so on and carried out a brutal set of attacks. So think about this. A few million people living in one of the most densely populated places in the world. Think about Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, 3 times more density of population in Gaza City, who are being told, you gotta go but they have nowhere to go to. They can't access the sea. They can't access Egypt through the Sinai. They can't access Israel for obvious reasons, right? They have nowhere to go. The Ukrainians had a refugee corridor. Palestinians do not. So I want to ask the question, what is the end game here for the Israelis, and why has our government not taken actually any sense of moral responsibility or compassion for Palestinian lives to try to end this as soon as possible, to de-escalate this and bring this at the minimum to a ceasefire? What is the end game? And so many of my Jewish friends, including Israeli friends, are not supportive of what is going on here. But they often tell me we have almost a psychic fear of what they call collective annihilation. We know where that came from, and we understand and have compassion for how that has been imprinted upon Israeli peoples and Jewish peoples around the world. But is the solution to a fear of collective annihilation the collective annihilation or the collective punishment, which is a war crime? It's a crime against humanity of another set of peoples. An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind, you know? Someone pretty famous once said that. So what are we gonna do? What's the end game here? Why is our media not asking any of these tough questions? Why can not the most powerful nation in the history of the world do something to stop this? Stop this. That does not justify what Hamas did, but it doesn't come out of a lack of context.
So look, there's one other commentator that we want to get to, a conservative who seemed to be celebrating this. And I'm going to let Ray get to that in a second. But I want to make sure everybody understands this. Like, one of the things, I'm worried about a lot of things. I'm worried about innocent Palestinian civilians. I'm worried about the Israeli hostages that are there. By the way, when you bomb a building, what if they have the hostage in the building? So who are we helping? What are we doing, right? But one of the things that I'm worried about is that these actions by the Israeli government accidentally help Hamas. Because I asked the same question Ramesh asked about this Israeli action about Hamas. And you heard me ask that several times this week. What's the end game? You go butcher these poor innocent people. How does that get any support for your cause? It doesn't make any sense. It makes you the bad guy. It makes you look like a monster. It seems to validate the stereotypes that people have about you, about Palestinians, about Muslims. It's such a terrible thing to do. But maybe this was their end game. Maybe the end game was provoke Israel into an overreaction that is so large that it horrifies the world. Because there is no end to the occupation. Israel at this point is saying, we're not even offering you any peace treaties. We're not going to the table. We're not negotiating. So your occupation and your imprisonment will pretty much be forever. And we need you to reject all of your leaders. We need you to reject everyone that and come to us with people who will tell us what we want to hear. That is not how you negotiate with your enemies. You cannot say to your enemies, I hate you, so why don't you give me someone who will agree with me instead of you? That's not how it works. Imagine if Hamas went in and said, I hate Netanyahu. Why don't you give me some Israeli that's going to agree with the Palestinians instead? That's an absurd request. It's an insane request. You negotiate with enemies. You don't negotiate with friends. And when you need a peace treaty, do not, if that was Hamas's trap, please do not fall into that trap. It doesn't help the Palestinians and it doesn't help the Israelis. And so I'm gonna ask a hypothetical at the end to all of you, not just our host here, but to the audience. But now to the issue of the civilians being killed. What President Herzog said, and I've seen President Herzog be reasonable in other instances, but this is not his this was a terrible moment for him. Because think about the consequences of what he says. Other than moral consequences of saying the civilians are guilty. The civilians shouldn't have supported Hamas. The civilians, it's the entire nation that's at fault. But President Herzog, that's what Hamas says. Hamas says, well, you guys elected Netanyahu and you elected these right-wing government, and this right-wing government will keep us occupied forever. So we had no choice but to attack your civilians. Do not agree with Hamas. Do not agree with Hamas. That is a terrible idea.
If you enjoyed this video, that's because of our members. They make us independent, they make us strong, and they make us honest. Become a member today by hitting the join button below.